Welcome everybody. Ni hao. That's the only Chinese I know. And welcome to this short course, short class on the rise and the future of humankind. And I think it's a particularly good time for a course about the past, the rise, and the future of humankind, because we are probably one of the last generations of humans on Earth. The decisions that we will make, our generation, in our lifetime, will probably change the very nature of humankind, will change the very nature and course of life on Earth, and maybe even beyond the Earth. And a baby born today probably will still have grandchildren, but his or her grandchildren are unlikely to have grandchildren of their own, at least not human ones. Because in about a century or two, our species will probably disappear and give place to something very different. But before speaking and understanding the future of our species, or the possible futures of our species, we need to begin with the past. We need to begin with the rise of humankind, trying to understand how we have reached this juncture, this point. So if we go back, let's say 100,000 years ago, we will find that our ancestors back then, 100,000 years ago, were insignificant animals. The most important thing to know about our ancestors is that they were unimportant animals. Their impact on the world 100,000 years ago was not much bigger than the impact of any other animal, like bears, or like jellyfish, or like woodpeckers. They're just another kind of animal. And another important thing to know about humans 100,000 years ago is that there were many different species of them. We are now used to being the only human species on Earth. Everywhere you go to China, or you go to Israel, or you go to Canada, or you go to South Africa, you meet the same human species, Homo sapiens. And it seems to us quite obvious and natural that all the humans in the world belong to a single species. But this is actually quite strange, because if you look at other animals, then most other animals come in different flavors, in different kinds. If you think about bears, for example, so you don't have just one species of bears all over the world. If you go to North America, you find grizzly bears. If you go to the polar regions, to Greenland, to Alaska, you find polar bears. If you come to China, there are panda bears. If you go to the Middle East or to Europe, you find brown bears and black bears. So why have just one species of humans on Earth? And indeed, if we go back in time, 100,000 years ago, we find that planet Earth is home not only to a single human species, our ancestors, Homo sapiens, but to many different kinds of humans living side by side. Whereas our ancestors, Homo sapiens, evolved and lived in East Africa, in Europe lived another human species, a different human species, the Neanderthals. In East Asia, you had Homo erectus and Homo denisova. And like this, in different parts of the world, you had different human species. All of them unimportant animals. If you fast forward to today, and it should be noted that 100,000 years is a very short time in evolutionary terms. It's very long in terms of human life, but in terms of evolution, this is a very short time. Nevertheless, within this very short time of 100,000 years, our ancestors from East Africa, the Homo sapiens, not only spread out over the entire world, drove to extinction all the other human species, but they also became the most powerful force on the planet. We now are no longer unimportant animals. We are the most important force on the planet. We shape This planet, we shape the ecological system, and we will shape the future of life, maybe not only on planet Earth, but even beyond it. Just to give you a few facts, a few statistics about our power today. If you make a census, if you count all the large animals on the planet, let's discount the insects and the germs and the microorganisms and focus on large animals, let's say from chicken upwards, and count all the animals, the big animals in the world, you will find that first of all, there are of course us, humans, Homo sapiens, and today we are more than 7 billion people. And if you take all these billions of people together and put them on a very large scale, you will find that together humanity weighs about 300 million tons. There are 300 million tons of humans on the planet. Who else is on the planet? Well, you have all the domesticated farm animals, the pigs, the cows, the horses, the chickens. If you take all of them together and put them on a large scale, you will find that they weigh about 700 million tons. So we have 300 million tons of humanity and 700 million tons of farm animals that we have domesticated and enslaved to our own needs, and which we basically treat as our property. Who else populates the planet? Well, if you read children's books, or if you watch a Disney film, you might come under the impression that the planet is full of lions and elephants and chimpanzees and dolphins and whales. And they are there in the books and on the television, but they are no longer there in reality. Very few large wild animals remain in the world. If you take all the big wild animals of the planet together, all the whales and dolphins, all the elephants and lions and giraffes and panda bears, and you place all of them on a big scale, you will find that they weigh less than 100 million tons. Less than 10% of the wild animals of the planet are still wild animals. To give another statistic, if you think how many penguins there are in the world, if you count all the penguins, they number 50 million. If you now count all the domesticated chickens, they number about 50 billion chickens. There are 1,000 chickens for every penguin on the planet. So this gives you some measure of our immense power today over life in planet Earth. And in the coming decades, in the coming generations, our power will only increase even further. We are about to change the most basic rules of the game of life. Life first appeared on planet Earth about 4 billion years ago. For these 4 billion years, the basic rules of life did not change at all. For 4 billion years, life was subject to the rules of natural selection, and life was confined to the realm of the organic biochemistry. All the organisms that existed on this planet for 4 billion years evolved by natural selection, and they were all made of organic compounds. This is now about to change, to be changed by us, by humans. We are now in the process, thanks to the power of science, of biotechnology, of artificial intelligence, of nanotechnology. We are now in the process of replacing natural selection with intelligent design, and we are in the process of allowing life, or pushing life out of the limited realm of the organic and into the much vaster realm of the inorganic. After 4 billion years of organic life, we are now creating the first non-organic life forms, like artificial intelligence. And this is a tremendous revolution, in the history of life on Earth, and even in the potential history of life beyond planet Earth. Because organic life, almost by definition, is limited to planet Earth. It is extremely difficult for an organic being like Homo sapiens to live outside the planet Earth. You need oxygen, you need water, you need the special condition of this planet to exist. Therefore, it's very, very difficult for humans or other organisms to travel even to the moon or to Mars, not to mention further away. With inorganic life, like artificial intelligence, this becomes much easier. It's much easier to send a computer with artificial intelligence on it to Mars or to the next planets than it is to send humans. So we are now in the midst of this immense revolution, which will be the subject of the later talks of this course. What I want to dedicate this initial talk, this initial class, is to try and understand a little bit about our past. How exactly did we turn ourselves from insignificant apes, minding their own business in a corner of Africa, into the rulers of planet Earth? And how did we accomplish this immense revolution within such a short time? Only 100,000 years, which again sounds a lot in terms of human life, but is actually very quick in terms of evolution. So when we think about this question of the secret of success of our species, Homo sapiens, very often most people look for the secret of our success on the individual level. We want to believe, each one of us usually wants to believe, that there is something special about me personally, individually, that makes me such a superior creature in comparison with any other animal, in comparison with a chimpanzee or a pig or an elephant or a dog. I want to think that I'm much superior, I'm much smarter, I'm much more powerful. But the truth is that on the individual level, we are embarrassingly similar to chimpanzees and to gorillas and to many other animals. And if you take me and a chimpanzee and place us both together on some lonely island to struggle for survival, to see who survives better, I would definitely place my bets on the chimpanzee, not on myself. I guess the chimpanzee would do much better than me. And I imagine that if they took almost any one of you and put you alone on some lonely island with a chimpanzee, the chimpanzee would do much better. Because it's not on the individual level that humans are superior to chimpanzees and to other animals. Rather, it's on the collective level. We humans control this planet because we are the only animals in the world that can cooperate flexibly in very large numbers. Now, there are other animals that can cooperate in large numbers, of course. The most obvious example are the social insects. The ants, the bees, the termites, they also cooperate in very large numbers. But cooperation among the social insects is not flexible. It is very, very rigid. There is basically just one way in which a beehive can function. There is one way for the bees to organize themselves. And if there is a new opportunity or a new danger facing the beehive, the bees cannot reinvent their social system overnight in order to cope better. The bees, for example, cannot execute the queen bee and establish a republic of bees or a communist dictatorship of worker bees. The bees cannot do it because it's not in their DNA. Their genetic code limits to a very large degree the kind of cooperation that bees can do. Now, there are other animals, especially the social mammals, that cooperate much more flexibly. than bees or ants. However, the social mammals may cooperate flexibly, but they do so only in relatively small numbers. They cannot cooperate in large numbers. If you take chimpanzees, for example, chimpanzees cannot cooperate in more than, say, 100 chimpanzees. They cannot do it. Why not? Because cooperation among chimpanzees is based on intimate knowledge one of the other. If I'm a chimpanzee and you're a chimpanzee and I want to cooperate with you, I must know you personally. I must know what kind of chimpanzee are you. Are you a nice chimpanzee? Can I trust you? Are you an evil chimpanzee? Should I be afraid of you? If I don't know you personally, how can I cooperate with you? And because it is impossible to have intimate acquaintance with more than, say, 100 individuals, chimpanzees cannot cooperate in their hundreds or in their thousands. Human beings, Homo sapiens, what makes us very, very special is that we somehow combine the two abilities. Like the other social mammals, like the chimpanzees, we can cooperate very flexibly. But like the social insects, like the ants and the bees, we can still cooperate in extremely large numbers. We can cooperate with thousands, even millions of complete strangers. If you think about all the big achievements of humankind, whether it's building the pyramids or the Great Wall of China, whether it's reaching the moon or splitting the atom, or deciphering DNA, all these huge achievements were not the result of some individual genius. They were the achievement, the outcome of cooperation between thousands and hundreds of thousands and even millions of individuals coming together to cooperate on these projects. So 1 versus 1, even 10 versus 10, we are not superior to other animals. But if you pit 1,000 humans against 1,000 chimpanzees, then you will see the big difference. Then humans will easily defeat the chimpanzees because 1,000 chimpanzees cannot cooperate at all. It will just be complete chaos. And if you now take 100,000 chimpanzees and cram these 100,000 chimpanzees into a sports stadium or into a university or maybe into Wall Street, what will you get? You will get complete chaos. In contrast, if you cram 100,000 humans into a sports stadium or into a big university or into Wall Street, what you get is extremely sophisticated and effective networks of cooperation. Even this talk that I'm giving here before you can serve as a good example of this unique human ability. I'm standing here before about, I don't know, almost 1,000 people, and thousands more are watching this over the internet. I don't know almost any one of you. I just arrived in China 2 days ago. I hardly know anybody in this country. I don't know the pilot and the crew member of the Turkish airline flight that brought me over here from Israel. I don't know the people who invented and manufactured these cameras and this screen and this device that I'm using in order to convey my ideas to you. I don't know the people who wrote all the articles and all the books that I've read in preparation for this talk. Even though we don't know each other, nevertheless, all of us cooperate in creating this event, in creating this intellectual exchange of ideas. This is something amazing that only human beings can do, not chimpanzees. Chimpanzees, of course, communicate. Chimpanzees also have a kind of language, and they talk with one another. They convey information to one another. If a lion is coming and one chimpanzee sees it, so he would raise a shout, a lion is coming, and everybody runs away. So chimpanzees communicate, of course. But you will never see a chimpanzee leaving his home territory, traveling hundreds or thousands of kilometers to the territory of a different chimpanzee band to give these alien chimpanzees a talk, a lecture about humans or about chimpanzees or elephants or bananas or anything else that might interest chimpanzees. It never happens because chimpanzees don't cooperate with strangers. Humans do cooperate with strangers. Of course, cooperation, human cooperation is not always nice, is not always good. We tend to associate the word cooperation with nice things, but we should be very clear that all the terrible things that humans have been doing throughout history, and humans have been doing very terrible things throughout their history, they too are based on large-scale, flexible cooperation. Prisons are also a system of cooperation. And armies and slaughterhouses and concentration camps, these are all systems of cooperation unique to humans. Chimpanzees, they sometimes kill each other, but they don't have prisons and armies and concentration camps. So all the good things and all the bad things that humans have accomplished, have done for the last thousands of years, are the result of this unique ability to cooperate flexibly in very, very large numbers. Now, suppose you accept this basic thesis, this basic idea. The next question that immediately comes to the mind, at least of an inquisitive audience, is what exactly make it possible for humans, alone of all the animals on the planet, to cooperate flexibly in very large numbers? How do we do it? And the answer that at least I have to give you is that the imagination, the human imagination, is the key to human cooperation. Humans can cooperate flexibly in very large numbers because humans can invent fictional stories, imaginary stories, and spread them around. And as long as everybody believes in the same fiction, everybody obeys the same laws, the same norms, the same rules, and this is what enables strangers to cooperate effectively. And this is very unique to human beings. No other animal can invent and spread fictional stories. For example, to see how it works in practice, if you think about chimpanzees, you can never convince a chimpanzee to give you a banana by promising the chimpanzee that, look, if you give me this banana, after you die, you'll go to chimpanzee heaven, and there you will receive lots and lots of bananas for your good deeds here on earth, so now give me this banana. No chimpanzee will ever believe such a story. No chimpanzee will be willing to give you a banana because you told him this story. Only human beings believe such stories, which is why only human beings have these massive organized religions, and only human beings build cathedrals and mosques, and only human beings go to fight on crusades and jihads. Now, what I want to emphasize is that this mechanism of inventing and spreading a fictional story as the basis for large-scale cooperation, this mechanism characterizes not only the religious field, it also characterizes all other fields of human activity. It may be easy to accept that in the religious field, people cooperate in large numbers because they all believe the same fiction about God and heaven and hell and so forth. But exactly the same thing is true of all other forms of human cooperation. If you think about the political field, so the most important institution, the most important idea of modern politics is probably the nation and the state. Yet nations and states are not an objective reality. They are not a physical reality. They are just an imaginary story, a fiction in our own shared imagination. A mountain is an objective reality. A river is an objective reality. You can see it, you can touch it, you can even smell it. But Israel or Italy or the United States, they are not an objective reality. They are not part of the physical world. They are just a story in our own minds. A story which was repeated so many times, and people have become attached to it so forcefully that they cannot even think that, hey, this is just a story in our own mind. It's not an objective physical reality. No chimpanzee ever saw Italy or Israel or the United States, because these things exist only in our own mind. Similarly, if you think about the legal sphere, the legal field, maybe the most important idea in the legal field over the last few centuries have been the idea of human rights, which form the basis for the legal system of many countries around the world and also for much of international law. But the reality is that human rights are, again, just a story, a fictional story like God and heaven that humans have invented and spread around over the last few centuries. Human rights are not a biological reality. They are not a real part of human nature. If you take a human being and cut him or her open and look inside, what's inside this thing, the human being? You will find the heart and the kidneys and blood and hormones and neurons and DNA, but you will not find any rights. The only place rights exist is in the stories that humans have invented and spread around over the last few centuries. Now, I don't want to imply that it's a lie or that it's something bad. There is nothing bad about stories. They are the basis for cooperation. Without some such stories, we could not establish functioning legal and political and economic systems. And I want to emphasize, especially for you, that the same mechanism is also at work not only in the religious and political and legal field, but also in the economic field. Also, the economy, the human economy, is based on shared fictions, shared fictional stories. Maybe the most important agents, actors, today in the global economy are corporations. Corporations like Toyota, like Microsoft, like Google, like Mercedes-Benz. What are these corporations? Again, they are not an objective reality. The corporation, ask you, what is it? The corporation is not the factories owned by the corporation. Toyota, for example, is not the factories. Some big earthquake might destroy all the factories of Toyota. It doesn't mean that Toyota disappears. Toyota Corporation continues to exist even if all the factories are destroyed. It still has money. If it doesn't have money, it can borrow money from the banks and build new factories. Similarly, the corporation is not the workers, the employees. Maybe all the corporations of Toyota will come together and go on strike, demanding higher wages, and the management becomes very upset and says, "You're all fired, go home." It doesn't mean that at that moment Toyota ceases to exist. No, these are just the employees of Toyota. They are now fired, but Toyota continues to exist, and it will simply hire new employees. Similarly, Toyota is not the management of Toyota. All the managers of Toyota may come together to go on a plane to fly over maybe to China to sign some important business deal. And on the way, a terrible accident happens, the plane falls to the sea, all the managers are instantly killed. No manager of Toyota remains alive. What happens to the corporation? Nothing. The corporation continues to exist. It would simply hire new managers. And similarly, the corporation is not the stockholders. You can sell all the stocks to somebody else. The ownership passes to somebody else, to other people. The corporation doesn't disappear because you sold all the stocks. So what is the corporation? It is what lawyers call a legal fiction. It's a fictional story that lawyers tell and convince everybody to believe. Look, there is such a thing in the world, Toyota Corporation, and these are the rules and laws that govern its behavior. And if millions of people all believe these legal fictions, they work. They form the basis of our economy. And what do these corporations do all day? Mostly, they try to make money. This is what corporations do. But what is money? Money is another fictional story invented by humans and unique to humans. No other animal has money. If you take a dollar bill and look at it, what is it? It has no objective value. You cannot eat it, you cannot drink it, you cannot wear it. It's not useful for anything. It has no objective value. But then come the big storytellers, the biggest, the best storytellers in the world. Who are they? They are not winners of Nobel Prize in literature, no. The best storytellers in the world are the big bankers and the finance ministers. And they come to us and they tell us a very convincing story. Look, you see this green piece of paper? We are telling you that it is worth 10 bananas. And if everybody believes it, if you believe it and I believe it, it works. I can take this worthless piece of paper, go to a complete stranger whom I've never met before in some supermarket, give him this worthless piece of paper, and in exchange, he or she will give me bananas that I can eat. This is amazing. And this is something that only humans can do, not chimpanzees. Chimpanzees can trade. You'll give me a coconut, I'll give you a banana. That can work with chimpanzees. But you give me a worthless piece of paper and you expect me to give you a banana? What do you think I am? A human? That will never work with chimpanzees. Only humans can believe in money. And maybe the most interesting thing about money is that money is the most successful story ever invented by human beings. Because it is the only story everybody believes. Not everybody believes in God. Not everybody believes in the nation. Not everybody believes in human rights. But everybody believes in money. And everybody believes in the same kind of money. Different people might have created different monetary systems, and they couldn't trade. But the amazing thing about money is that even people who hate each other, and even people who don't agree about anything else, still believe in the same money. If you think about Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State, for example, they hate America, the USA. They hate American politics and American culture and American religion, but they don't hate at all American dollars. They have nothing against American dollars. When the Islamic State, for example, last year conquered various cities in Syria and Iraq and got hold of the government institutions and the banks, it destroyed all kinds of symbols and statues and buildings, but it never destroyed any money. When the Islamic State got millions of dollars, dollar bill, in the banks of Mosul and Raqqa and other towns and cities that it captured, even though these dollar bills had pictures of American presidents on them, and it had writings in English praising United States and the Christian God and so forth, the Islamic State did not burn these dollars. It took them and made use of them. So money is the most successful story ever told. It's the firmest basis so far for trust between human beings. What money really is not paper, it's not gold, it's not silver. In essence, money is trust. It's the best, most efficient system of mutual trust ever devised by human beings, and it's ultimately based on fictions in our own mind. Now, you might get the impression from this talk that it's easy to tell stories and spread them around. But it is very, very hard. The hard thing is not telling the story. This is, of course, easy. The hard thing is convincing everybody to believe your story. There are so many different stories in the world. There are so many different stories about different gods, about different religions, about different institutions. How to convince everybody to believe my story and not the stories of somebody else, of the competitors? Much of history revolves around this question: how to convince everybody to believe in the same story. And it doesn't always succeed. Most of the wars and revolutions in history were caused by this inability to agree on the same story. Very often people think, why do we fight so much? Why are there so many wars and revolutions in the world? And people think, oh, it's because of the same reason that other animals fight. The same way that chimpanzees, two chimpanzee bands, may fight over territory or over food, so also humans on a larger scale fight over territory or over food. But this is not true. With few exceptions, the vast majority of wars and revolutions in history were not about territory, and they were not about food. They were about fictional stories. To take an example from my own country, from Israel, you may hear a lot in the news about the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. What is it about? People think it's about territory, but it's not about territory. There is enough land between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River for everyone. There is enough land to build houses and schools and hospitals for everybody. There is no objective shortage of land. Similarly, there is no objective shortage of food. There is enough food between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River to feed everybody. So why do the Israelis and Palestinians fight? Because they have very different stories, very different fictions in their minds, and they cannot agree on a common story. To take a counterexample, if you think about the history of Europe over the last century. So a century ago, Europeans, Germans and French and Italians were killing each other by the millions in the First World War. And later on, even greater slaughter in the Second World War. Now, Europe is perhaps the most peaceful place on earth. What made the difference? It wasn't the discovery of more territory. It's not that in 1914 there was shortage of land in Europe, so they were fighting over the land, and then they discovered more land and gave some to the Germans and gave some to the French, and now everybody is happy. No, it's the same amount of land in Europe today that there was a century ago. So why are Europeans now peaceful? Because they have managed to come up, to construct, to invent a new story, the story of Europe, which replaced, to a large extent, the national stories of Germany and France and Italy and so forth. And because now all the Europeans, or most of the Europeans, can be happy with this new story, with this new identity, so they no longer fight each other. To conclude this part of the course, the first part of the course, when we asked for the Sapiens secret of success, when we ask ourselves why we control the world, the best answer that I can give you is that we humans control the world because we live in a dual reality, in a double reality. All other animals on Earth, chimpanzees and lions and elephants and so forth, they live in an objective reality. The reality of a chimpanzee consists of mountains and rivers and lions and elephants. This is the reality of a chimpanzee. We humans, we also live in an objective reality. In our reality too, there are rivers and mountains and lions and elephants. But On top of this objective reality, we have constructed, over thousands of years, a second layer of reality, of fictional reality, a reality consisting of fictional entities, like gods, like money, like nations, like corporations. And the amazing thing is that over the centuries, this fictional reality became more and more powerful, so that today, the most powerful forces in the world are these fictional entities. Today, the very survival of lions and elephants and trees and rivers and mountains, their survival now depends on the wishes and decisions of corporations, of nations, of the European Union, of the World Bank, entities that exist only in our own imagination. Thank you very much.